Everything starts with a boy plummeting from the sky at high speed. They say dreaming about falling from a great height actually means something. Specifically, it's supposed to be a sign that you're about to hit a major growth spurt. At that moment, our main character wonders if this is all just a dream, but he quickly realizes that's definitely not the case. While taking a total beating, Kang Kwon reflects on his 17 years. He always figured he'd never grow past 5 feet 2 inches, and he knows exactly why. The kid thinks he should have inherited his mom's genes. Instead, he's frustrated because he ended up looking exactly like his old man. Only the image of his dad comes to mind at that moment. Feeling a punch land square on his face, Kwon blames this whole disaster on his father. Meanwhile, a video plays on a phone showing a girl dancing and telling everyone to move their hips more. Holding the device, one of the bullies complains that the kid's shoe lifts are totally out of control, getting visibly annoyed. Someone tells him to stay close to Mujeong. This is the daily struggle for a high school freshman standing at only 5 feet 2 inches. The attacker complains he was almost able to get a good photo. Noticing that Kwon is much shorter than he looked, the whole situation was already pretty predictable. The bully warns that he needs a chocolate milk every morning just to survive. Suddenly, Kwon grabs the carton from the bully's hand and asks what's the deal with the drink. Lightning fast response, Wonseop lands a solid kick right on our MC. Slumped on the ground, the kid screams the bully's name, Jang Wonseop. Unable to defend himself, he continues to take a series of hits from the attacker. The impact hits his face full force, causing a world of pain. The beating spreads across the area, with the MC being tossed around without a single chance to fight back. Adjusting his clothes, the bully warns that if he wants the drink that badly, he should buy it himself. For Kwon, who's in his first year, getting beat up just for being short has become an exhausting routine. With his foot on the kid's head, Wonseop insults him and asks why he isn't listening, but reality is harsh. Landing more heavy punches, the attacker says he tried asking nicely, but apparently he'll have to teach him the hard way. Enduring the pressure, Kwon can only think that everything is still as predictable as ever. The bully backs off a bit, complaining that his blood sugar is dropping, annoyed that Kwon always acts like he has a death wish. Laughing with the others, he mocks the kid, asking if his brain is tiny too, while ordering something from his henchman. Our MC's eyes go wide, shocked by what he sees next. Without a shred of mercy, Wonseop pours the milk over Kwon's head, telling him to drink up and see if he grows an inch. As they walk away, the other students tease the bully for being so sweet, joking that the drink had been expired for 7 days. Sitting there on the dirty ground, Kwon hears Wonseop remind him that the deadline is tomorrow. He threatens that if he's short 300,000 won, he'll hang the kid by his ankles from the school rooftop. The troublemakers head out for a smoke, commenting on Wonseop's insane height, since he had already grown 2 inches since starting high school. Completely soaked, the kid is shocked, thinking about how growing 2 inches in a single month is absolutely crazy. Wasting no more time, he simply gets up and grabs his backpack to get out of there. Walking away smelling like sour milk, he laments. While he hasn't grown in 5 years, seeing someone huge get even bigger feels totally unfair. Worried about the cash, the kid wonders how he's going to scrape together 300,000 won every single week. On the street, an older man smokes and complains that kids these days have zero respect for adults. This is Kang Sungryong, Kwon's father. He grumbles that in the old days, kids used to hide to smoke, until he hears his son calling him. The father is facing the same bullies from before, who think the old man is a nutjob and confirm his nickname is Chihuahua. Cracking his knuckles, Wonseop approaches, saying the old-timer doesn't realize how dangerous youth are today. The bully raises his fist, threatening to break a few of the old man's bones to teach him a lesson. Before the blow can land, a mysterious hand grabs Wonseop's fist mid-air. The scene catches Kwon completely off guard, leaving him terrified. A sharp-looking man holds Wonseop firmly and warns that nowadays, any fight gets filmed and ends up going viral on the internet. This is Choi Kang-kwon, the kid's uncle. He calmly suggests they'd better pick up their cigarette butts instead of drawing attention. Intimidated by his presence, the troublemakers immediately start cleaning up the mess on the ground without questioning the orders. Running away in a panic, they curse at the annoying old men, while one trips during their escape. Watching the scene, the uncle says to just let the punks go, since they're just cowards who rely on their size. The two adults finally notice Kwon standing nearby. The kid just says he's home and walks straight past them, coldly ignoring the conversation. Pointing a finger, the father gets annoyed and asks who his son inherited that slouching walk from. That questions our MC's nerves directly, making him freeze instantly. As he walks away, Sungryong claims that posture is exactly why the kid keeps getting beat up and tells him to walk tall. The resemblance between the two is uncanny, sharing the same short stature, thin limbs, and a totally fragile build. On top of that, the thought of inheriting future baldness haunts the young man, feeling like he carries the title of family loser. Unable to take it anymore, Kwon screams at the top of his lungs that all his misery is because he's identical to his father. Angry, he lets out a curse and bolts down the street, leaving the two of them behind. The adults just watch him flee from a distance, processing the sudden outburst of rage. Sungryong raises his fists, calling his own son a psycho and asking if he wants to die. The uncle remains silent, simply maintaining a serene expression in the face of the family drama. Night falls over the city, cooling down the tempers around the small shop. Watching a boxing video on his phone, Kwon hears the theory that the first strike always wins and wonders if it's possible to avoid it. Hanging upside down while training, the kid is still indignant about his own father asking who he took after. Swaying from the effort, he thinks it's absurd. After all, it's obvious he inherited all the worst family flaws. The image of his father looking at him with pity comes to mind, making the kid hate being seen as a failure even more. Then, firm footsteps approach the rooftop, breaking the silence as someone mentions how long it's been. It's his uncle, who jokes about his nephew running off to the roof without even greeting his favorite visitor. Dropping some bags on the ground, Kangwon reveals he came all this way just to deliver a gift. The kid recognizes the package immediately. It's an exclusive music album that isn't even supposed to be out until next week. The uncle explains he asked for a special favor and scored an autographed copy, leaving his nephew beaming with joy. Carefully, the kid unrolls the promo material to check out the limited edition items. Changing the subject, the man takes on a serious tone and admits that Kwon's father was wrong. The mood on the rooftop turns heavy fast after that statement, surprising the kid. Taking off his glasses, the uncle criticizes the fact that his father would question the traits of his own son, who came home hurt, even though they look identical. Defending his friend, he says Sungryong used to be very handsome back in the day, but Kwon cuts him off, asking for actual proof. The young man questions how lifelong friends don't have a single photo together. Laughing, the uncle agrees it sounds like a lie. Milk carton in hand, the kid reflects on his current situation and his usual problems. Our MC confesses that if he were tall like his uncle, he probably wouldn't suffer so much bullying at school. A brief silence fills the rooftop as the two of them sit side by side. Moments later, Kangwon opens a drink and calmly states that height doesn't really matter. The man guarantees that having the right mindset is what actually makes the difference in someone's life. Frustrated, the kid fires back that hearing that from a giant means absolutely nothing to him. He pushes himself trying to get taller, training, drinking milk, and even watching videos online. Despite his nephew's frustration, the uncle sticks to his guns, guaranteeing that an unbreakable mind is enough. In silence, the kid listens to the advice carefully, absorbing the older man's words. However, he admits he still wants to reach at least 5 feet, 7 inches to feel good about his own body. While staring at the sky, Kwon thinks that would be great, since he hadn't grown even a fraction of an inch in a long time. Until, measuring his height against the wall, he notices something unbelievable and is shocked by the result. After 5 years of suffering, the kid finally grew 1 whole centimeter. Overcome with euphoria in his room, he celebrates hitting the 5'3" mark. Walking through the school hallways, the student is already dreaming big, wondering if he'll soon grow another 8 inches. Proud as can be, he marks his new achievement on the wall at home before heading out to study. The day starts peacefully at school, with students arriving through the main gate. Walking through the crowd, the kid even thinks the other students look a bit shorter today. He had no idea the air half an inch higher was so refreshing, feeling the difference in the atmosphere. But the illusion of grandeur is short-lived when he notices a familiar presence blocking his path. Right off the bat, Won-seop looks down on him, calling the kid a midget with pure mockery in his voice. The bully gets straight to the point and demands the 300,000 won he was owed. Overwhelmed by absolute despair, our MC lets out a terrified scream as he remembers the debt he forgot. Then, he ends up hanging upside down from the roof and begs the attacker not to let go. Laughing at the humiliating situation, the bully warns he wasn't going to kill the kid, who swears he'll get the money fast. As a cynical excuse, Won-seop says he feels sorry for him and is just trying to help him grow by stretching his body. Without any warning, the enemy simply lets go of the victim's legs into the void. Plummeting in freefall, the kid screams with all his might, thinking his life has ended right there. At the last second, strong hands grab his ankles firmly, stopping the tragedy. Up above, the other troublemakers laugh at the torture, telling the kid to stop squirming. Holding the kid again, the attacker asks if he's impressed and brags about his brute strength. Our MC ignores him and keeps screaming in desperation as he sees death up close. Because of the sweat, the bully's hand starts to slowly slip from the student's ankle. Prize Won-seop realizes he's lost his grip and stands totally paralyzed watching the kid slip away. Panics over the troublemakers as they notice the kid actually fell this time. Terrified by the accidental murder, the leader shouts the kid's nickname, while Kwon curses those idiots. The fall is now final, and he tears his throat screaming all the way to the ground. In his last moments of consciousness, his only anger is that they should have held him properly before tossing him. Suddenly, the kid wakes up dazed on the ground, hearing a voice ask if he's finally awake from his faint. Staring at his own hands, he's completely confused, because he fell off a building and feels nothing. One of the guys taunts him, asking if he passed out just from that, which makes our MC confirm he's alive. Looking around, he notices he's on a different rooftop, very different from his original school. The setting lacks the modern buildings nearby and is full of old chairs scattered around. To make matters worse, he finds himself surrounded by a group of very dangerous-looking students in old-fashioned uniforms. However, he soon notices a bizarre detail in the situation. All the bullies are looking up to face him. Annoyed by the distraction, one of the punks calls the kid Choi Kangkwon and tells him to stop the act. Hearing his own relative's name, he's left baffled by the crazy situation he's landed in. Instinctively covering his mouth, the kid can hardly believe what he's witnessing. Looking into a window pane, he finally sees his uncle's reflection and discovers he's in his body. Now he's a student standing at an impressive 6'2", living in the past. The surprise is brutally interrupted by a hard kick to the gut that sends him backward. The attacker fumes, thinking it's ridiculous to be ignored like that in the middle of a shakedown. Prepping another punch, the enemy complains about an old fight involving the big guy. With the impact, the kid is hit full in the face, having no time to get used to the slowness of his new body. Grabbed by the collar next, he's forced to hear the demand to pay back the lost money. Pulling out some crumpled bills, the bully insults his uncle's origins, calling orphans trash. While taking more hits, the kid deduces he's been mysteriously transported into Kangkwon's memories. The group leader continues the insults, belittling the kid for having the size but not knowing how to fight. That pathetic scene destroys the image of the tough, confident man he admired so much in the present. Shocked by the painful reality, our MC realizes his beloved uncle was once a total loser too. Shortly after, more students arrive at the roof complaining about being hungry and soon find the kid caught in the ambush. The gang leader warns they need to finish the beating soon before the teacher on duty shows up. Facing a group of freshmen that just arrived, the bully mocks the tiny size of the guy who stepped forward. Full of rage, the unknown young man defends the orphanage, making Kwon notice how short he is. The presence of that small leader is terrifying, exuding an intimidating aura alongside his giant companions. The smaller kid tells them not to touch the victim, which leaves the main attacker quite confused by the scene. Hearing the enemy call him a coward makes the vigilante go ballistic, pulling his own hair in rage. Calling his opponent a nutcase, he immediately orders his friends to hold the bully by his shirt. In a quick move, his leg moves with insane speed, setting the stage for the attack. With precision, the leader lands a powerful flying kick directly on the loudmouth bully's chest. The brute force of the blow leaves the henchman's jaw dropped, totally stunned by the speed of the action. Without giving the fallen enemy a break, the fighter slams his face into the ground, asking if he wants to die right there. Taking advantage of the general shock, he charges at the rest of the enemy group, handing out relentless punches. In a few seconds of brawling, the mysterious hero takes down everyone on the roof with immense ease and violence. This whole sequence proves perfectly that you don't need to be a giant to destroy a bunch of spineless bullies. The fight goes into full swing with the small fighter taking the big guy down with a well-placed strike. Furious at the humiliation, the attacker screams, calling the kid crazy while trying to pull himself together. Without a second thought, he charges at the young man with everything he's got, showing all his rage. Our MC is impressed watching how a kid at 5'3" with a stick, thin body can stand up to that. Calmly, the young man just steps back, prepping the ground for a counterattack. In an incredible move, he intercepts the big guy mid-air and lands a devastating punch right on the enemy's face. Watching it all from the front row, Kwon can hardly believe the scene unfolding before his eyes. That short guy simply managed to knock out 4 giant dudes in a fraction of a second. Looking at the last opponent left standing on the roof, the kid tells him to stay calm before he gets hit too. At that, our MC's eyes go wide, processing a bizarre piece of info he just noticed. He realizes that the mysterious bully is literally a spitting image of himself. Stepping forward, the young man says he wasn't dragged to the roof, but that he went there to finish them all off. With insane flexibility, he delivers an impressive high kick that brushes past our MC. Exactly at that moment, Kwon reads the tag on the school uniform, confirming the name Kang Sungryong. Completely in shock, he discovers that this formidable fighter is none other than his own father. The memory of the old man in the future comes to mind, a short, bald, fragile man who spent his time complaining about kids. The old-timer was always lecturing him, asking who his son took after to be walking all hunched over and getting beat up on the street. Staring at his teenage father, he hears the kid say he hates jerks who rely only on their size. Totally stunned, Kwon let out a murmur, calling out to him, trying to connect the dots. The resemblance is undeniable, confirming that this brawling student is truly the younger version of his old man. In his head, the image of the failure man is still too strong and hard to ignore. His father was always known as the district's Big Chihuahua because of his annoying attitude, the typical Napoleon complex, where the tiny dog tries to snarl at dogs much bigger than him. Watching the kid's speech against the tall bully, he notices the combative attitude is exactly the same. Even knowing he'd get crushed in a fight, the old-timer always kept up a tough guy act just to hide it. Getting slapped in the face was routine, and what annoyed Kwon most was being looked at with pity by someone so pathetic. The old man's voice still echoes in his memory, guaranteeing that no one in the family used to get beat up like that. His uncle's old words about Sungryong being a charming, popular guy with the girls now make perfect sense. But for our MC, accepting this is impossible. After all, he grew up seeing a certified loser. However, the cold, hard truth is right there, with the young man maintaining the imposing pose of his flying kick. The shock of discovering his old man was a stylish guy and a top-tier brawler sends his head spinning. Still paralyzed, the kid keeps calling for his father, not knowing how to react to this crazy situation. Cutting through the silence, the big guy charges, throwing a heavy punch, but ends up getting it blocked. The impact is strong, making muscles tremble while the defense remains firm and impenetrable. The attacker is stunned, not understanding how such a small body managed to hold back all that brute force. Frustrated, the giant tries another violent charge, missing completely as the opponent quickly dodges. Seeing the opening, Sungryong unleashes a sequence of fast strikes to the enemy's chest and face. The attacks flow like water, connecting continuous punches in a display of pure skill and flawless technique. The lack of hesitation results in a brutal beatdown, punishing the bully without giving him a single chance to defend. With the opponent off balance, the young fighter jumps, reaching an insane height on the roof. No mercy, he comes down hard with a crushing blow from above directly onto the attacker. The giant crashes violently to the ground, kicking up dust and ending the brawl for good. Landing smoothly, the father fixes his clothes while our MC watches that crushing victory. However, looking at his own trembling hands, Kwon notices the truly impressive detail in this whole story. Feeling the pain from the hits, he realizes how resilient that giant body of his uncle's is, which he now inhabits. Being so different from the mature man of the future, he thought that teenager wouldn't handle the beating. Wiping his face, the kid reflects on the bone density of that thin physique that managed to take the punishment. Staring at his own massive hands, he finally understands the feeling of having such long limbs. Turning his attention back to his father, he's perplexed by the resilience of the short guy who's taken plenty of hits and is still standing. Seeing the young man suddenly dodge, Kwon inwardly questions if his own old man is some kind of monster. Breaking the mood, a shout echoes ordering everyone to stop immediately, catching both boys' attention. An intimidating silhouette emerges against the sunlight, wielding some kind of club in his hands. Without warning, the mysterious figure delivers a heavy blow with the wooden board toward them. The weapon hits the rooftop floor with violence, revealing the words, "Spiritual Bat," carved into the wood. A terrifying man stares at the students with a dark expression, stating he had already told them to stop. Holding the piece of wood, he complains about the chaos during break, making Kwon think he's some kind of thug. Our MC is completely lost, trying to figure out what a mobster would be doing inside the school. Fallen on the ground, one of the bullies who got hit earlier lets out a groan of pain, trying to get up. Calmly, the man readies the bat, quoting a philosopher to justify that humans need education. In a rage, he starts laying into the fallen troublemakers, demanding the correct use of uniforms. The truth is terrifying that 27-year-old man with a psycho face is actually a teacher. The braided bloody wooden board is officially classified as the educator's primary weapon. The kid's mind short-circuits trying to understand why a teacher needs combat gear. The students' screams of agony echo across the school's main building during the punishment. Pressing the bat, the teacher reminds them that classes only started a week ago. He beats the group of bullies, frustrated that they're already starting fights so early. Crushed against the ground, one of the attackers suffers while being lectured about mandatory uniform items. In the hallways below, the other students hear the noise and comment on the mess on the roof. Passing by the window, a blonde girl snubs the situation, criticizing how barbaric it is to keep hitting others. The father looks away, clearly uncomfortable, while Kwon tries to figure out the reason for that reaction. The school bell starts ringing loudly, marking the end of break in the middle of that collective punishment. In the crowded hallways, monitors wave their wooden slats, screaming for everyone to get back to class. Pointing the weapon, the teacher orders the two boys to head to the office and put their heads on the floor. Performing the classic punishment of staying upside down, the kid suffers. questioning what kind of school this is. To make the madness of that era worse, he catches the teachers themselves laughing and smoking freely in the hall. Violence runs wild, with the kid being brutally beaten and forced to stay with his head pressed to the floor. Looking at a calendar on the wall, he discovers that this bizarre day is March 10th, 1996. Upside down, our MC tries to digest all the madness that just went down on the roof. Recalling the brawl and the teacher coming down with the club, he suspects his uncle's memories are surfacing. At that, Kwon reflects on whether this could be time travel or reincarnation as he sees his young father struggling to hold his pose. Silence dominates as the short guy trembles from exhaustion, trying not to collapse on the cold hallway floor. Not understanding the guy's reaction, the kid asks if he's laughing and warns they almost ended up in the hospital. Shaking with rage, Sungryong tells his rival to stay after school because he plans to finish him off. RMC stays silent, processing the threat he just received so directly. In his mind, the image of his bitter old father in the future emerges with immense clarity. Looking at the stubborn teenager beside him, he concludes that no matter the age, the headstrong personality is identical. Admiring his quiet father, he focuses on the young man's bruised face as he refuses to back down from the fight. Annoyed, Kwon questions if the short guy thinks he's a joke and challenges him to settle it right then and there. With the punishment finished, our MC fixes his hair, complaining of a massive headache. Returning to class, they hear a general announcement about the start of mandatory night studies next week. The homeroom teacher sarcastically mentions that the troublemakers are being dragged to the office for fighting. Walking to his desk, the kid looks at the packed classroom and sizes up the strict man running the class. While the master reinforces the mandatory night studies, Kwon notices the students sit in height order. The class president loudly asks for everyone's attention for the final greeting. As soon as the class thanks in unison, someone suddenly shouts our MC's name. A student grabs him by the collar, telling him to pack his things fast to settle something outside. At the same time, another student grabs Sungryong, demanding a reckoning, leaving the short guy desperate. The bully demands to know why the young man didn't show up yesterday and drags him out of the room screaming. Watching the scene, our MC is surprised to find out his loser father was actually a delinquent in the past. However, the distraction costs him, and he soon finds out his giant uncle was the real target of that group. Without warning, an attacker hits the back of the kid's neck with violence, catching him totally off guard. Taking more hits in the middle of the room, the enemy complains indignantly that Kwon was the only one who got off scot-free. The gang leader with the bruised nose orders everyone to move out as Brother Daeseok has called a meeting. Recognizing that name immediately, our MC stutters, shocked by the unexpected info. Moments later, the gang arrives in front of the orphanage gates run by a social assistance foundation. In the courtyard, one of the kids with a shaved head explains that a cruel inspector caught him on the way and did that. Quiet in the middle of the circle, our MC reflects that he never knew about his uncle's origin living in an orphanage. Facing that dark gang, his mind is flooded with bad memories associated with that oppressive place. The image of Brother Daeseok emerges terrifyingly, though the old memories of him are still quite fuzzy. Desperate, he wonders if he'll have to live among all those cowardly bullies from then on. Cutting the tension, the gang leader demands his banana milk and is quickly served by one of his henchmen. The kid's eyes go wide, absolutely stunned to recognize the familiar face of that arrogant giant. Drinking heartily, the boss comments that he needs that sweet milk in the morning to recharge and be at peace. In disbelief, Kwon mumbles the name Jang Won-seop, not believing his future attacker is right there. The surprise is short-lived as a devastating kick lands directly on his face with full force. The impact slams our MC to the ground brutally, giving him no chance to defend or react. The attacker fumes, remembering he had told the gang to finish off just one single kid. Mercilessly, Daeseok questions how his henchman managed to return in that pathetic state after being beaten. Landing a violent knee on another boy, he punishes his followers for failing to capture the target. Angrily, the boss warns that this embarrassment would make others think they're easy targets at school. The general beating continues in the orphanage courtyard, with several boys scattered on the ground groaning. Standing imposingly, the big guy insults Kwon and thinks it's absurd that he's the only one without injuries. The leader glares at our MC with hate, demanding an explanation for how he escaped the school chaos unscathed. Feeling the pain of the punch from earlier, the kid just mumbles while trying to recover from the shock. In a sudden flash, the image of the school emerges, marking the memory of a tense moment from earlier. The memory shows a student storming into the room and fiercely shouting Choi Kangwon's name. Another student warns that the target had already left with the orphanage crew, leaving the intruder frustrated. Heard in the corner of the room, the young father calmly confirms the destination of the fleeing group. Returning to the present, our MC lets out a sound of understanding, realizing how the whole situation connected. The sounds of heavy beating fill the air as the leader continues to punish his own gang without mercy. Cowardly, the big guy accuses Kwon of being useless for just watching his family get hit without doing anything. Heartlessly stomping on one of his henchmen, the boss humiliates our MC, saying that's why his parents abandoned him. Then he lands another brutal kick on Kwon's face, demanding he at least serve as a human shield. Suffering the attack, the kid despairs over having time traveled only to be beat up by someone identical to his killer. Finally, looking at that bully's cynical smile, he understands the real reason those uncle memories were so blurry. The attacker grabs our MC's face, mocking his empty look and calling the young man a useless weakling. Totally helpless, Kwon discovers his uncle also hated that moment and inwardly begs for help. Suddenly, the big guy lets go of the kid and looks forward, surprised by an unexpected approach at the gate. Young Sungryong invades the grounds, questioning the chaos, leaving everyone shocked by his guts to go there alone. Fallen to his knees, the kid looks at the figure of his father, hardly able to believe he came to rescue him. Confident in his size, the gang boss tells the freshman to shut up and asks if he knows who he's dealing with. In response, the short guy just glares at the big guy, repeating his hate for jerks who think they're superior. Taking a firm step forward, he warns he's made his choice and that tub of lard would be the first to get hit. With an explosion of speed, Sungryong jumps and lands a lethal flying kick right on the gang leader's face. The young man's expression is pure rage and determination, without a single drop of fear for his massive opponent. Without losing momentum, he follows up with a powerful punch, punishing the enemy with that same insane force. In the future, Choi Kang-kwon would become an absolute success at 47 years old. He'd be the president of a massive entertainment agency responsible for managing countless global idols. A true alpha male standing at 6 feet, 4 inches of pure dominance, strength, and authority. And besides all the wealth and prestige, he was still known for being a kind and gentle man to everyone around. To him, Uncle Kang-kwon was always a great role model to follow, being very firm when he needed to be. However, seeing his hero being grabbed and humiliated like that totally shattered his imposing view of the future. Kneeling on the dirty ground, the big guy was taking a bad beating from the group of bullies without being able to fight back. Our MC finally understands that his own uncle also suffered at the hands of that oppressive gang. Being stomped on without mercy, it's clear why his memories of that time were so blurry. Interrupting the reflection, Dae-seok mocks that the short freshman will be the first to get hit today. Watching that surreal scene, Kwon can hardly believe his own father went there to save them. At that, the giant bully takes a firm step forward, prepping the ground for the attack. Wasting no time, Sungryong surprises everyone and lands a brutal flying kick directly on the leader's face. Our MC is in absolute shock at his old man's sudden aggression. Taking advantage of the momentum, the young fighter spins his body in the air, completing the force of the devastating blow. The direct impact makes Dae-seok's head snap back, leaving the henchmen wide-eyed. Seeing their boss crash hard onto the ground, the troublemakers panic and shout his name. In the middle of the chaos, Kwon notices a strange movement happening right behind him. One of the henchmen tries a cowardly back attack, calling the intruder an insolent rat. Wiping blood from his mouth, Dae-seok spits on the ground, warning that they are all dead. The kid questions how the enemy is still in one piece after that hit and worries about his father's safety. He knows full well that even a simple block against that monster already hurts like crazy. Ignoring the danger, Sungryong charges straight at the giant without the slightest hesitation. Our MC follows every move with maximum attention, trying to predict the outcome. But soon he's caught off guard by that smaller kid's insane agility. With impressive technique, the short guy uses his own body to throw the heavy attacker onto the ground. Dae-seok ends up being tossed spinning through the air as if he weighed absolutely nothing. The exchange of blows gets intense, with quick blocks and heavy punches cutting through the air. Furious at the the bully curses his opponent, swearing to break that krat in half. With great fluidity, Sungryong quickly backs off, dodging the violent attack coming his way. Taking advantage of the open guard, the fighter hits back with a massive punch directly to his rival's ribs. The brawl goes wild in the orphanage courtyard, with the henchman just watching the leaders fight from a distance. Feeling a shock run through his own body, Kwon is spooked by the colossal strength he just witnessed. He analyzes his father's stance, confirming that those blows focused on the sides cause massive damage. Breaking into a cold sweat, the kid concludes that Dae-seok is literally a monster who's impossible to take down easily. The enemy stands nearly 6'7" and weighs over 220 pounds of pure physical resilience. Rumor has it he endured a brutal beating during the battle for the top of sophomore year, without falling once. The memory of the warning to never mess with this guy suddenly makes perfect sense in Kwon's mind. Scratching his hit rib, the giant mocks, praising the insolent kid's heavy hand. Our MC panics, knowing no one can win a fight against someone who never falls. At that, the big guy charges, firing a direct punch with all his brute strength. He predicts his opponent's dodge and quickly readies his own defense. Using his thick arms, Daisy blocks the side kick the short guy tried to land. With the impact, the young fighter is thrown back, sliding across the dirt ground of the courtyard. Far from backing down, Sungryong shows pure confidence, warning that the big guy is just wasting energy for nothing. That arrogant provocation destroys the gang leader's patience, and he roars with fury. Watching the fight up close, two henchmen comment in fear that the short guy must be the famous Yacha. The rumor about the most dangerous bully from Noyang Middle School always ran through the halls. Legend says a single boy wiped out several opponents alone, taking the dreaded title of Demon. The troublemakers keep gossiping that said demon destroys anyone, regardless of size. Proving the fame, the short guy lands a lightning fast punch right in the middle of the giant's face with precision. Even though they're impressed, the henchmen guarantee that Kid has zero chance against their boss. As predicted, Daisy catches his opponent's fist mid-air, locking the attack with ease. The young fighter's calm look wavers for a second as he realizes he's been caught red-handed. Lifting his rival by the shirt, the bully curses the kid with hate while preparing the punishment. With his free hand, he grabs Sungryong's head, imposing all his oppressive weight. Without a shred of pity, the giant slams the young man's body into the ground, opening a crater in the dirt. The sequence of hits kicks up a cloud of dust, covering the brutality of the fight. Seeing the massacre happen, our MC screams desperately for his father to watch out. Tossed on the ground, the short guy clicks his tongue, frustrated by his own defensive fail. Before he can react, the enemy's heavy boot stumps down hard, blocking his movements. The attacker unleashes a series of cruel kicks to the ribs, telling the kid to stay down for good. Kwon is paralyzed with dread, watching that cowardly scene without being able to move a single muscle. Sadistic, Daeseok celebrates finally capturing that damn rat. Aiming to end the fight, the giant brings down his fist like a sledgehammer toward the fallen opponent. In an impressive reflex, Sungryong uses his body's momentum to leap back, escaping death. He lands firmly on his feet, leaving drag marks from his soles on the dusty ground. Agonized by the situation, Kwon screams his own father's name, unable to contain his desperation. Hearing that weird shout, the henchmen look at each other, totally confused by the big guy's madness. Daeseok pauses the attack for a moment, wanting to know what the heck that giant idiot is talking about. With pure mockery, the boss reminds him that failure has lived 17 years without ever having a father in his life. The shock hits our MC full force as he remembers that Uncle Kangwon really was a lonely orphan. Turning his attention back to the fight, the attacker cracks his neck, annoyed by the short guy's pesky speed. Taking a deep breath, Sungryong suffers from the direct impact pain and focuses on getting his breath back fast. Staring at his prey, the bully warns with sadism that he'll go easier if he just stays real quiet from now on. Breaking the promise, Daeseok joins both hands in a lethal top-down attack. The ground shakes from the violence of the blow, throwing dirt everywhere in the courtyard. Predicting an open guard, the giant punishes his opponent with a storm of crushing punches. Cornered, the young fighter crosses his arms in front of his body, enduring that monster's infernal pressure. Completely annoyed, Daeseok shouts that a middle school kid shouldn't try to outdo him. The giant stomps mercilessly on the kid and warns he'll crush him so he never tries to move up in life again. Watching from afar, Kwon breaks into a cold sweat and just stutters, asking the attacker to stop. Overcome by despair, our MC screams with all his might, telling him to stop immediately. Seeing the massacre get worse, the kid panics, thinking his own father is going to end up dying right there. Without a second thought, he charges at full speed to try and stop that cowardice. In a quick impulse, the young man shoves the bully to try and get him off the short guy. The unexpected impact makes the giant back off a little, feeling the kid's strength. In that tense moment, the old lesson that height doesn't really matter echoes in his mind. The memory of his uncle stating the right mindset is what actually counts resurfaces clearly. Slowly turning his face, the gang boss is surprised and confused by the interruption. Clenching his fist full of hate, our MC focuses only on protecting his old man. With pure rage, he lands a heavy blow, demanding the monster not dare touch his father. Suddenly, the chaos disappears and the kid wakes up lying on an infirmary cot. All bandaged up, he blinks slowly, staying quiet as he tries to figure out where he ended up. Back to the brawl, the monster is thrown backward by the insane force of the punch he took. Gritting his teeth in rage, the attacker glares at our MC's terrified but firm look. With his body off balance, the gang leader hits his back hard against the brick wall. Gasping for air, Kwon watches the giant prop himself up on the ground, trying to get up after the fall. Bleeding from the mouth, Daeseok glares at the Kate and asks how a skinny punk dares to do that. Annoyed, he calls our MC a monster while the young man just lets out a groan of pain. Suddenly, the big guy gets a fright, noticing quick movement coming from below, taking advantage of the gap. Sungryong uses the enemy's leg as a brace to get momentum. In an impressive leap, the short guy flies high, cutting through the sky with bizarre agility. Staring at his prey from above, the father tells the giant to go to sleep once and for all. Without the slightest mercy, he delivers a devastating spinning kick right to the opponent's face. The force of the impact is so brutal it completely distorts the bully's face. Unable to take the punishment, the leader crashes face first into the dirt, kicking up a cloud of dust. The gang's henchmen fall into absolute panic and scream their boss's name, totally shocked. The giant still tries to stumble a bit, but soon loses strength and falls defeated for good. Tossed on the ground, one of the troublemakers thinks it's ridiculous that their boss lost to a brat. Like that. Hearing the insult, Sungryong faces the cowards and asks if they still want more. At that, a man in a suit appears at the gate, shouting furiously to know what's going on. The gang freezes in fear as they recognize the orphanage director and wonder why he showed up so early. With heavy steps, the old man walks toward the boys, exuding an aura of pure rage. Without giving a chance to defend, the man lands a stinging, cowardly slap on the short young man's face. Our MC's eyes go wide, in absolute shock at the sudden aggression. Returning to the present on the cot, Kwon rests his arm on his forehead, feeling the pain from the bandages. The same director screams in the room, accusing the kid of stealing and beating up the other children. Furious, the old man calls him a delinquent and complains that the institution's money is already very tight. Pointing a finger, he demands to know if the skinny kid is the one who's going to pay everyone's hospital bill. Kalmar MC fires back, stating the old man knows full well who started the fight. He throws it in his face that the director always pretended not to see the bruises he got from being beat up daily. The kid goes on to say the thefts are Daeseok's fault, but the administration always covered up the crimes. Tired of the hypocrisy, Kwon states the old man only punishes him out of pure fear of standing up to the real leader. Losing it, the old man grabs the patient by the collar, offended that an orphan would talk back like that. Shaking the kid without mercy, he bellows that anyone saw perfectly well who was hitting whom out there. Holding his bruised face, Kwon accuses the director of acting innocent while plotting behind his back. Foaming at the mouth with rage, the man screams that insolent delinquents, like him, are the worst kind of trash. Suddenly, a voice appears at the door calling the old man trash and complaining he's tired of hearing so many lies. A mysterious man points his finger, demanding the director's expulsion before asking permission to come in. Ignoring the orphanage owner, the newcomer approaches the bed, asking if he is Choi Kang-kwon. Taking off his sunglasses, the man calmly introduces himself as the father of young Kang Sungryong. Our MC's heart races as he realizes he's standing before his own grandfather from the past. Excited by the meeting, Kang Mando comments that he happens to have some spare rooms in his house. In a welcoming gesture, the grandfather invites the injured kid to move in with his family starting today. The sudden proposal leaves the student wide-eyed, completely shocked by the kindness. Stuttering, the director tries to intervene, saying the student needs to stay at the institution until he finishes school. Quickly, Mando grabs the old man by the neck, exposing that he only wants the government subsidy money. The grandfather tightens his grip, furious with the man who only thinks about money, while the kid is all hurt. While the trash director calls as he's choked, our MC interrupts the fight, accepting the invitation instantly. With eyes full of tears, he begs the man to let him stay at his house to escape that place. Hearing that sincere plea, Mando lets go of the suit's neck and focuses his attention on the injured kid. Satisfied with the answer, the grandfather agrees with the idea and asks them to get along from now on. Feeling an immense relief in his chest, Kwon rests his head on the pillow, trying to dry his tears. Now outside and recovered, the kid observes the surrounding street with a very reflective look. Standing in front of the building, he recognizes his family's old house before all the future renovations. Charmed by the nostalgic neighborhood, he sees the convenience store he used to visit as a child. The older man warns they can buy necessary things little by little and calls the young man to head up. With his backpack in hand, the student enters the apartment, feeling the weight of returning to his true home. The living room shows a totally classic decor, full of wooden furniture and large windows. Admiring every corner of the place, our MC sighs, noticing everything remains exactly as he remembered. The warm image of his family gathered on that same sofa fills his mind with deep longing. He reflects that living in that era without internet or social media would be quite complicated and boring. But the daydream ends when his teenage father complains about the slowness and tells him to help move a box. Slapping his son's head, the grandfather complains he causes trouble every day and has no right to complain about the room. Mando threatens to cut his allowance if the kid keeps talking back. At that, the young father goes totally silent instantly. Watching that family dynamic, Kwon feels immense relief and thinks about how happy he is to finally be home. The scene changes to the entrance of Supa High School, with several students arriving for another day of class. Suddenly, the calm is broken by a violent punch landing square on a student's face. A big guy hands out beatings in the hallway, cursing the other students with pure rage. Without the slightest mercy, he follows up with another brutal blow that destroys the opponent's defense. The fight runs wild with the attacker, taking down several students at once with extreme ease. Taking advantage of the open guard, the big guy lands a direct punch to the face of a taller student. The impact is heavy, tearing a groan of pain from the victim, who can barely stay on his feet. Finishing the massacre, a devastating hook throws the kid back with brutality. The attacker fixes his jacket and sighs in frustration, complaining that the fight was just too easy. At that, a hand touches his shoulder. A guy with long hair thinks it's bad to be dragged out so early like that. The big guy explains he was excited to find strong seniors at school, but only found disappointment. With pure mockery, he stomps mercilessly on the head of one of the students lying on the ground. The attacker stares at the victim on the floor and asks with contempt if that was all they had to offer. This is Woo Hunjin. The long-haired guy soon comments on the recent expulsion of the giant Jang Daeseok. Hunjin is surprised by the news. His friend explains the monster was caught extorting kids from the orphanage and finally got kicked out. Frustrated, the bully laments the loss, as he planned to fight him as soon as his suspension ended. However, the partner reveals a bizarre rumor that Daeseok ended up in the hospital after being beaten by a freshman. Totally in shock, Hunjin doesn't believe a freshman did that. The friend then reveals the name Kang Sungryong. This guy with the hair over his face is Oh Dae-oh. He deduces that the mysterious freshman must be from another area. Dae-oh comments that neither of the two involved in the fight has shown up at school yet to confirm the story. The image of Daeseok emerges as a true, uncontrollable, and terrifying beast. Feeling his blood boil with excitement, the bully repeats Sungryong's name, burning the new target into his memory. On the school bulletin board, an official notice confirms Daeseok's expulsion, generating comments of relief in the halls. Several students gossip about the notice. One laments the lost money, while another mocks the extortion his friend suffered. Watching the paper, Kwon sighs in relief at not having to cross paths with that giant monster again. Holding a bag, he reflects on the incredible novelty of bringing a home-cooked meal to eat. The memory of his grandfather handing over the lunch surfaces, the kid thinks it's bizarre for a delinquent to go to class before 7 a.m. Walking down the hallway, our MC thinks it's weird trying to call his father in that formal way in the middle of school. Awkwardly, Kwon approaches and touches the young man's shoulder to hand over the meal. He explains that grandfather sent the lunch, keeping a safe distance from the problem kid. The short guy thinks the situation is ridiculous, having to carry a lunchbox through hallways full of students like that. Exuding pure threat, Sungryong warns that the big guy is very mistaken if he thinks they became partners just because they live together. Intimidating his own son, the kid warns he's the next target, leaving Kwon totally terrified. Before the fight can happen, a massive hand quickly advances toward the short young man as a surprise. In a cowardly attack, Sungryong is grabbed by the collar and thrown back with insane violence. Regaining his balance, the young father glares at the attacker, complaining about the dirty back stab. Without giving a break, Hunjin lands a massive kick that lifts the short guy into the air without any effort. The impact throws Sungryong straight against the hallway lockers, scattering things all over the floor. Fallen in the middle of the mess, the kid looks up feeling pure confusion and rage at the ambush. The lunchbox smashes on the floor as the brawl takes over the crowded hallway. Looking at the fallen target, the attacker realizes his mistake and mocks, saying he hit the wrong person by accident. Staring the kid in the eyes, Hyunjin asks directly if he is the famous Kang Sungryong everyone is talking about. The young father's body spins in the air without any control after receiving that surprise brutal kick. Even dazed by the sudden aggression, the short guy doesn't bow his head and maintains a death stare. The crash against the metal lockers makes a deafening noise that scares all the students standing around. Holding the victim's shirt, the bully laughs at the situation, stating he really grabbed the wrong guy along the way. Repeating the previous question, Hyunjin wants to confirm once and for all if that shrimp is really Sungryong. The big guy is extremely disappointed. He expected to find a mountain of muscle since he defeated Daeseok. Tilting his head, the bully insults the young father, calling him tiny with pure contempt in his voice. In an explosion of blind rage, the short guy reacts instantly, landing a high kick right on his rival's face. Surprised by the speed, the attacker crosses his arms, rushing to try and block the sudden attack. Watching it all up close, two students stand jaw-dropped at the freshman's insane guts to fight back. The kick's impact pushes the bully back, proving once and for all that size isn't everything in a fight. With blood in his eyes, the young man remembers Daeseok said the same height nonsense before being completely crushed. Without giving the enemy room to breathe, Sungryong charges, unleashing a focused direct punch with full power. Totally impressed by the kid's insane aggressiveness, the big guy hesitates for a second and loses his defense. With a heavy thud, the blow finds its mark full on, catching the attacker totally off guard. Dragging his shoes across the hallway floor, the bully backs off, trying to absorb the force of that clean punch. The young fighter clicks his tongue, frustrated because he thought the blow would land fully and not be partially blocked. Analyzing the situation in the middle of the chaos, Sungryong deduces the enemy must be a sophomore veteran. Groaning in pain from the impact, Hyunjin adjusts his stance in the mess, slowly regaining his composure. Beyond annoyed, the big guy grits his teeth, indignant that the quick attack grazed his jaw. Shaking in the corner, our MC follows the start of that brawl with his heart in his throat. Completely out of his mind with rage, the short guy screams, blaming the senior for ruining his grandfather's precious lunch. Hearing about the grandfather, Kwon is confused. At that, the young father tells the jerk to apologize for the smashed food. Sensing real danger, the other students flee desperately, asking for forgiveness and calling the freshman crazy. Adjusting his dirty jacket, the attacker mocks, saying the victory over Seok must have been pure beginner's luck. With a cold and arrogant tone, Hyunjin guarantees that level of strength isn't enough to touch him. Feeling the crushing pressure of the opponent in the air, the short guy glares at the senior without backing down a single millimeter. Observing the enemy's face from a distance, our MC finally connects the dots and recognizes the terrifying figure. Shock takes over Kwon as he discovers that guy there is the true king of the school's second year. Desperate at the level of threat, he wonders how many problems his own father started to attract monsters like that. Panicking, our MC despairs noticing the lunchbox is totally destroyed and he's gonna get hurt again. Arriving in a fury, the grandfather points his finger, demanding to know who was responsible for making that mess in the hall so early. The old man notices his own grandson has already fled the scene and pressures Kwon, wanting to confirm if it was his fault. Out of patience, Mando tells the kid to clean up the mess fast and threatens to punish him if he isn't in class when he gets back. Time moves forward, showing the school's exterior under the dark night. A whole week has passed since our MC arrived. The calendar on the blackboard confirms they are in March 1996 with the night study schedule. Writing in his notebook, he reflects that he should have died in the rooftop fall in the year 2026. Mysteriously, the kid survived the tragedy and ended up in his own uncle's body exactly 30 years in the past. Watching the teacher hand out violent punishments with a piece of wood, our MC analyzes the madness of that era. After surviving those first intense days, he concludes that year is catastrophically sick and wrong. Recalling the start of the day, the classroom door is opened slowly during the morning's 0 period. He tried to sneak in like a rat to hide the lateness caused by the lunchbox problem with the senior. Holding a punishment rod, the math teacher criticizes the excuses and tells the student to lean against the blackboard. The beating is in full swing, with the master complaining the freshman just got to school and is already late for classes. The punishment was just the warm-up. In the first class, another teacher beats a kid, demanding the study of Chinese characters. Furious, the master continues the torture session, ordering anyone who hasn't done their homework to stand up now. The punished student cries in pain while taking constant stick hits, trying to justify that he didn't know about the task. The nightmare follows in the second period, English class, wielding a crook bat. The teacher points the weapon, calling for the next target. Another student suffers merciless aggression while the educator shouts, complaining about the class's chronic disobedience. Terror arrives in the third period. The geography teacher lays into them, violently demanding incomplete tasks. Right after, in chemistry class, the violence hits its peak with the kid begging for the punishment to end quickly. Ignoring the pleas, the teacher delivers a brutal sequence of hits to the desperate student at the back of the room. Kneeling and hunched over his own school desk, another student takes massive hits to the back. Watching the scene in silence, Kwon calculates the classmate took about 50 hits in a row from that paddle. Breaking into a cold sweat in his chair, our MC reflects that even the worst future bullies didn't hit others that much. He thought the old internet stories were a big exaggeration, but he soon realizes the system there is bizarre. In the hallways, the despair is clear, with students running terrified trying to escape the adults' insane punishments. Some boys wash their faces frantically in the sink, swearing never to sleep in class again to avoid that true torture. Holding a terrifying hammer, the science teacher threatens to personally drag away anyone who dares sleep in class. Exhausted by the pressure, Kwon concludes school is a deadly dungeon infested with monsters disguised as teachers. Looking at the empty desk beside him, the kid notices his own father has disappeared again in the middle of all that madness. Annoyed by the lack of loyalty, he reflects on the irresponsible behavior the old man had during his youth. A recent memory shows the senior Hyunjin invading the room to confront the short guy about his school fame. The provocation quickly turned into a brawl, with the attacker landing a violent kick on the young man in the middle of class. During the break, the chair remains empty. Kwon calculates his father has already gotten into about 4 fights just that day. Despite his constant aggressive posture, he notices the old man is different from other delinquents because he always walks totally alone. Besides, the short guy never starts the confrontations or wastes time bullying the weaker students in the area. Recalling the flying kick he took in the hallway, our MC concludes staying near that kid is a real danger. Wiping the corner of his bruised mouth, he feels the direct consequences of hanging out with the year's biggest troublemaker. Focused on studies, the kid makes the firm decision to keep the greatest possible distance from his own father inside the school. The scene changes to an isolated alley behind the main building, full of cardboard boxes and trash scattered on the ground. Holding a cigarette, a senior student gossips indignantly about Monster Daeseok's humiliating defeat to a tiny freshman. Sitting in the back, the trio of friends discusses if that absurd beating ended up destroying the expelled giant psyche. Putting a bandage on his face, one of the guys admits the strength level of that freshman was no joke. Completely lost, Kwon and Sungryong face the trio of seniors without really understanding what was going on there. Cracking his knuckles with pure excitement, the leader of the trio smiles, eagerly seeing both targets show up at once. With a maniacal look, he focuses on the short guy, showing he's thirsty for a revenge full of blood and brawling. A quick memory shows the guy confronting Hunjin in the past, and ironically thanking him for the hospital visit. This is Chaeseong, a freshman adjusting his glasses and announcing he just returned to school today. The memory reveals the exact moment he took a brutal punch to the face for challenging the king of the area without knowing it. Clenching his fists hard, the freshman shows he hasn't learned his lesson and is ready to give back the pain twofold. With an expression of pure delirium, he charges, swearing with all his might that the outcome of that fight would be different. C follows the rush, thinking that King of Fists' title is a big childish and shameful joke. Ignoring the freshman's rage, Hunjin stops the attack by raising his hand and calmly states he's lost interest in him. Oozing arrogance, the senior confesses with a smug smile that someone else has caught his attention. The sudden rejection completely breaks the revenge mood, leaving Chaeseong paralyzed and confused by the response. Cutting to late afternoon, a shrill scream echoes through the school windows, calling Sungryong's name with hate. In the classroom, the teacher slams his book on the table, furious because the student tried to ditch night study on the very first day. The educator orders the runaway to follow him to the teacher's room immediately to receive the proper punishment. Watching the scolding, Kwon thinks he deserves it, but stays intrigued trying to understand why the old man always arrives early at school. To make matters worse, our MC looks at the desk, complaining inwardly that his father fled without taking the lunchbox. The silence is suddenly broken by a treacherous kick that hits the kid's face full on as a surprise. With the force of the cowardly blow, he's thrown back, breaking desks and falling awkwardly on the classroom floor. Staring at the victim on the ground, Chaeseong introduces himself with a cynical tone, saying it's a great pleasure to meet him. Adjusting his glasses, the attacker explains the senior praised his skills and he came to test if the rumors are real. Fallen in the middle of the mess, Kwon lets out a murmur, totally lost, not understanding the reason for that out of nowhere attack. Still dazed by the pain in his face, the kid questions what kind of special skill the lunatic was looking for. Walking through the halls with his father, the young man complains he'll end up with a crooked face from all the beatings. The short guy grabs a bully by the collar on the stairs, giving a moral lecture that a student should focus only on studying. In a quick memory, Hunjin states dismissively that the previous punch didn't even use 10% of his true power. Massaging his wounded cheek, Kwon sighs, tired of always paying the price for others' messes. The memory of the giant's hand hitting his defense emerges, showing the colossal strength he had to hold back. Reflecting on the blow, he deduces how lethal that second-year monster's real punches must be. The image of the kick that threw him through the air in the hallway haunts the kid, proving the enemy plays dirty and heavy. Rolling up his sleeves, Chaeseong smiles eagerly to test the insane resistance of that giant who takes beatings without falling. Taking a beating, our MC wonders why on earth he's just standing there taking the hits. In the hall, the other students watch the scene confused, commenting that it doesn't look right. A crowd starts forming at the classroom door, curious to know what's happening inside. Without giving a break, Chaeseong charges and lands another brutal punch directly on the kid's face. Completely outraged, the attacker shouts the giant's name and asks if he's going to get beat up again. Taking advantage of the lack of reaction, he follows up with a violent hook that hits the target full on. The freshman demands Kwon fight back, just like he did with the senior Hunjin, questioning if he's just going to take the hits. Landing more punches, the lunatic wants to know if this was the spiky-haired guy the senior was talking about so much. Frustrated, he asks what kind of special skill that was, since the big guy fell with just one hit before. The memory of taking a painful punch to the stomach from the senior comes back to haunt the attacker. Back to the fight, Chaezong mocks our MC being all hunched over, calling him useless despite his height. He glares at the target, indignant that the senior found this coward more interesting than him for a fight. Gasping for air, the freshman complains that the opponent is annoying for not falling down no matter what. Watching the mess, a student in glasses announces calmly that the giant won't fall anytime soon. The classmate asks why, so he explains he saw the kid in the hallway and guarantees his resistance is surreal. The guy remembers the giant took a direct punch from the senior and got up right away, predicting all the attacks. Curious, the classmate asks how he knows all this. The gossip smiles and says it's because he loves this stuff. This is Jo Hyun-seok, a fight fanatic. He claims any guy gets his blood boiling to see who's stronger. Calmly, he confesses he doesn't know how to fight at all, but he's completely obsessed with watching. The classmate just listens in silence, impressed by the nerd kid's ability to analyze the school's fights. Returning to the massacre, Chaezong charges with everything, feeling that the situation is getting dangerous for his side. With a heavy blow, he throws our MC violently against the lockers at the back of the room. The attacker backs off a bit, gasping for air, clearly worn out from hitting a human wall so much. Without losing rhythm, he jumps, aiming a flying kick to finish the fight once and for all. The impact crushes the kid against the furniture, tearing a groan of pain as he tries to protect himself. Observing the cowardice up close, one of the students gets spooked and mumbles, asking if no one is going to stop that. Totally out of his mind, the freshman bellows the opponent's name, demanding to know why he doesn't fight back. Huddled in defense, Kwon falls into despair, inwardly begging for it to stop soon because he can't take any more. Our MC screams that he already knows he's a failure, desperately questioning why he keeps taking such a beating. Landing another punch, Chaezong notices the target really has no intention of fighting and wonders why he still resists. Frustrated by the infinite resistance, the attacker inwardly hopes the giant just falls already. Suddenly, the chaos is interrupted by a student telling everyone to get back to class because the lesson is about to start. The kid glares at the newcomer, reading the uniform tag and confirming that is the famous Kang Sungryewon. The lunatic in glasses is shocked by the legend's tiny size, but is soon caught totally by surprise. Without any prior warning, the young father lands a devastating punch directly on the loudmouth bully's face. The blow's insane force launches the attacker through the air, destroying desks before falling knocked out on the floor. Silence takes over the entire room, with the short guy glaring at the fainted enemy in the middle of the mess. Kwon stands jaw dropped, witnessing the ease with which his father knocked out the guy who was beating him. The mood gets tense in the room, with our MC watching his savior without knowing exactly how to react. Maintaining an intimidating posture, Sungryewon just glares at the body on the floor with a look of pure hate. Turning his face, the young father calls the giant by name and asks why he's walking all hunched over like that. The look of contempt on the kid's face is clear, obviously annoyed by the big guy's cowardly posture. Instantly, Kwon remembers the old man in the future saying the exact same phrase when he came home hurt. Without saying anything else, the short guy turns his back and walks to his own desk, ignoring the heavy mood. Clenching his fists hard, our MC feels his blood boil with frustration from being humiliated again. Exploding with rage, our MC points his finger and screams that the fault for him being this way lies with idiots like his father. Venting all the pain, he accuses the school delinquents who can't go a second without starting a fight. The kid rants about bullies who just want to show off by hitting and bullying innocent people out of nowhere. With teary eyes, Kwon bellows desperately, wanting to know what the weaker ones are supposed to do in the face of all that. Absolute silence dominates the class, with all the students paralyzed as the short guy stops walking. With his back turned, Sungryewon tells him to do something about it, which leaves the giant totally speechless. The young man explains that sitting there taking a beating and doing absolutely nothing will never change his situation. Turning his face, the fighter confesses he hates jerks who think they're tough just because they're huge. However, he warns coldly that he hates cowards who do nothing and just stay huddled while taking hits much more. Looking the target in the eyes, the father demands he find some shame and have a little self-respect. With the sermon finished, the short guy just sits at his desk, ignoring the damage he caused to his classmate. Our MC stays silent, absorbing those harsh words, feeling the weight of every insult from his old man. At the back of the room, the gossip in glasses watches the whole discussion with great attention. Hyun-seok maintains a serious expression, clearly calculating the bizarre dynamic between those two freshmen. The sun shines bright outside the school building, marking another tense day in the students' lives. Sitting at his desk, the kid buries his face in his arms, feeling the weight of the humiliation he just went through. He grumbles inwardly that of all people, that guy had to be his desk neighbor, predicting daily discomfort. Annoyed, Kwon keeps staring at the short guy who is already knocked out at the desk, sleeping peacefully. His father's cruel words echo in his mind, reminding him that just accepting hits will never change anything in life. At that, our MC remembers the moment he found his guts and landed a direct punch on the giant daisy oak at the orphanage. Indignant, he thinks it's very easy to say that when you know how to fight well, guaranteeing things never change. Suddenly, the nerd in glasses approaches from behind and states clearly that Sungryong isn't a delinquent. Surprised, the giant recognizes the gossip kid and questions, confused, what his desk neighbor would be then. Hyun-seok replies he's a fighter, which makes Kwon think it's all the same, showing off by hitting others. Adjusting his glasses, the nerd denies it instantly and guarantees a true fighter would never do something so cowardly. He reveals that the short guy only went to war against that whole gang because he decided to intervene to save him from a mugging. The kid explains that since that day, all the young man's fights have been responses to the attacks others started. Besides, he reminds him that Sungryong also saved our MC's life both that morning and back at the orphanage. The student guarantees the short guy he knows would never hit or bully someone without a good reason. With a serious and direct look, Hyun-seok finishes the conversation by telling the giant to get over himself and go apologize. Sitting at the desk, our MC reflects on everything he just heard in silence. The nerd warns he should apologize directly to Sungryong and states that wasn't the only important thing. Explaining the situation, Kwon reveals he also lived in the same orphanage as those thugs who were hitting the short guy. Hyun-seok is completely speechless, discovering his classmate's origin. Accepting the advice, the giant gets up, grabs his backpack, and agrees to settle the problem. At that, the gossip asks indignantly why he just sits there taking a beating from everyone. The boy in glasses confesses that if he had that massive height, he'd never accept being the school's punching bag. Processing the insult, our MC feels the weight of those direct words. Without saying anything else, he just walks down the hallway, leaving his classmate behind. The kid focuses on studies, writing everything in his notebook with great attention. Night falls over the city, lighting up the empty streets around the apartment. Entering the dark house, he admits to himself that this whole situation was a real shock. In the future, he was absolutely sure he'd never suffer bullying if he were giant like his own uncle. However, hearing an identical moral lecture coming from a scared nerd changes his whole perspective. Recalling the beatings from the year 2026, he blamed his father for inheriting a tiny, weakling body. Even in the past, inhabiting his uncle's giant body, he kept acting like a helpless victim, blaming the bullies. Deep down, the kid realizes he spent his whole life blaming his father, but the hard truth is he's always just been weak. With his mind racing, he reaches the switch and turns on the light in the empty living room. Observing the wall, the student notices some old markings were recently erased. Getting closer, he checks the numbers and dates scribbled, confirming the old struggle. He discovers those are height marks made over the years. The image of his young father measuring his own growth pops into his head clearly. This proves the old man also went through the exact same insecurity, trying to get taller. The fighter's harsh criticisms about hating people who just huddle while being hit come back to haunt the kid. Demanding he have at least a minimum of self-respect, the short guy proved that strength comes from within. The uncle's old lesson about height not mattering and mindset being the main focus finally makes perfect sense. Without wasting another second, hurried steps echo through the building's stairs. Running with everything, our MC recognizes the unique opportunity of having gained that impressive physique. Full of determination, he swears he won't live like a loser anymore and decides he needs to get stronger, whatever it takes. The top floor, he opens the heavy metal door to access the outside area. On the rooftop, the young father performs an impressive spinning kick, striking a punching bag with force. Landing agilely, the fighter is sweating a lot and notices the giant's unexpected presence up there. Our MC takes a huge fright finding his own old man training right in that spot. The gear swings heavily as the two freshmen face each other in the open area. Breaking the silence, Sungryong questions if the big guy also decided to ditch night studies. In the corner of the roof, some improvised weights and milk cartons show the short guy's heavy routine. Wiping the sweat, the fighter grumbles that now both of them will definitely be caught skipping class like that. Feeling courage pulsing, Kwon clenches his fists very firmly, ready to change his destiny. With a shaky but decided voice, he asks to be trained, leaving the young man totally confused. Staring his father in the eyes, the giant begs him to teach him how to fight for real. The sudden request catches the short guy completely by surprise, breaking his tough guy act. The mood on the rooftop gets tense with the two teenagers standing face to face under the moonlight. In the classroom, the teacher slams his rod on the desk. Furious to notice the problem, duo simply vanished.